Jon Corzine, welcome.
Good to be here.
You joined Goldman Sachs as a bond trader, a lowly bond trader in 1975. It takes you 5 years to become a partner, which is essentially joining really one of the most elite groups on Wall Street. In 1994, you became really the most important person at the most profitable firm in Wall Street history, right as it was preparing to go from a partnership, which it had always been, to a public company, which it would become in a few years. What did you learn inside Goldman Sachs about competing with rich and with powerful people, and not just competing, but you rose to the top?
1994 was the worst year that the firm had I don't know, in the last 25 preceding years. And 35 people dropped out of the partnership when I joined. So it wasn't like, wow, we really love this guy coming in. It really was a turnaround situation, which I thought was maybe the most important thing I did. And I'm very proud of how the team that I had the honor of leading was able to turn that around. And I think we had almost every year that I led the firm something certainly north of 20% returns on capital, and I think 2 or 3 of those years north of 30.
So you spent years pushing your partners to, on the idea of taking Goldman public. You win their support, and then before the IPO, over Christmas, you go skiing. I think in Telluride maybe. Your co-leader at the time, Hank Paulson, he worked with colleagues to, essentially, I think the fair way of saying it is to essentially push you out. One of your colleagues once said, Jon, you never lost at anything until that moment. What did losing teach you?
Well, that's just not, reality is that's not true. I lost and won many times in life as you proceed. This was a real shock to me. But apparently both the process of going public bruised egos and made people who I thought I could count on less secure than I should have. And then we had what was really one of the most important things I did at Goldman Sachs, along with Herb Allison at Merrill Lynch and Bill McDonough at the Federal Reserve. We put together the program that had Wall Street bail out long-term capital, not the taxpayers' money. We had 14 banks that put in, don't hold me to the number, I think about $3 billion, and a number of my partners thought I had overreached. I didn't personally believe I had. I think we served both the public interest, markets, and the interests of Goldman Sachs by taking that on, and others disagreed.
So you tell your aunt, I think you have a couple of aunts, I think. You told one of your aunts that you're interested in there's an opening in the U.S. Senate. And she said to you, Jon, politics is a dirty game. But you won. Few executives have managed to actually trade in Wall Street for Washington as effectively as you did. I kind of want to ask like a catty superficial question though, which is like, which one is sneakier? Is there one world where people really let themselves be known, and in the other one, people keep their motives hidden, or is it not really quite that simple?
I don't think it's that simple, but human nature is fairly consistent, and particularly when you're sitting among ambitious men and women who have good minds, see great opportunities, and sometimes another person is in the way of that person getting to that opportunity. And so probably I was a little naive on that from time to time in my career. Probably a little tougher in politics than I was at Goldman Sachs about those kinds of issues.
So if Goldman was first, politics was second, your third act was a brokerage called MF Global. I'm going to give the short obituary of MF Global. So it ended up imploding It was one of the I think one of the biggest bankruptcies in American history. I think you paid $5 million to settle Commodity Futures Trading Commission accusations. They said that you had a role in the unlawful use of nearly $1 billion of customer funds. You did not admit or deny.
I don't think that's right. I settled on a failure to supervise.
Okay, failure to supervise. They had originally had accusations.
There were accusations of all kinds of things.
Right. Okay, so you settled those accusations. Your experience tends to get lumped in with something different, which is the 2008 global financial crisis, which this was not. But I think there's this anger in America that firms went down, executives just simply move on. And I think it's fair to say that people on the right and people on the left have craved a certain kind of punishment for failure on Wall Street. What can you say to them?
Well, I think that if people break the law and do it with intent, I think both of those things are important ingredients, then I think they should be held accountable as anyone else would be. And I think there needs to be a quality of how people are treated in front of the law. And I think that the issue of breaking the law was pretty well handled by the facts, not by how it was written, not by how other people want to categorize it. So it's probably one of the greatest disappointments of my life. It's not the greatest sadness of my life, but the greatest disappointment, because other people were hurt and other people's integrity was challenged, not just mine, who I think much of which was unfair.
And yet, Jon, the story of Wall Street is a story of rises and falls and rises and falls, and you pick yourself up, a few years go by, you start a new hedge fund. It's called JDC-JSC, which is using your initials and your son's. This year, three, I think it's fair to call them sort of critics, Jon Corzine critics, they tried to essentially get you banned from futures trading. My understanding is you think they were just absolutely wrong on the facts.
They were.
And yet, you decided to close your hedge fund. Why did you do it? And what was it like to say goodbye to this act of your life?
Well, I don't think I'm saying goodbye. I'm starting a family office, which significant part of my hedge fund was funds for my family. Mm-hmm. I'm 76 years old, a little old. And I do believe that to be as successful as one needs to be in the world of hedge funds going forward, you're going to have a footprint in the quantitative side of the business. I think the highest probability of success will come with those that build out a team, but B, have access at computing power in a world of AI and all of the other elements, many of which are already practiced in the financial world. World changed dramatically from when I was reasonably successful as a trader in the 80s and early 90s to where the world is today. The people you're competing against, they're letting their computer programs, which they've spent enormous amount of intellectual horsepower to build, do that. And I think it's very hard to compete against.
I want to ask about someone you know, Goldman Sachs Chief Executive Officer, David Solomon. He has faced, without piling on, declining profits, and I think it's fair to call it very loud grumbling from colleagues over the past year or two. You are, this is putting a very fine point on it, but you're the last guy to lose the top job at Goldman amid kind of general infighting, as it were. How should Solomon handle it? Maybe differently than you did.
Well, first of all, I think David is handling it pretty damn well. Last time I saw him on camera, he looked straight at the camera and said, these things I've done well and these things I have to improve on. And I believe in our team and I believe in our purpose as a client-driven firm. I know he's a smart guy. historically, the firm always thought the trading businesses were cyclical and would end up undermining the PE ratio. Well, now the world sort of decided that's true of investment banking too, mergers, acquisitions. And so, the two greatest strengths of the firm have gone through difficult periods between COVID and the changing view about M&A in particular, but investment banking and fees have come down. So I think he has done a very good job of saying, I'm not so sure that one strategic tack we've taken is where we ought to be placing our chips, and that's an important thing for a CEO to do.
I think before you go, I want to ask you either my toughest question, or maybe this is the softest question of all, which is that what you want to be remembered for. Which of these acts that we've talked about? I'm imagining that maybe you might have a fear that MF Global will overshadow the rest. Is there something that you want to be remembered for, Jon?
I have 8 grandchildren. I'm more interested in what they think of me and what they know about what my values are and what they can build into their own lives and see them successful.
Jon Corzine, thank you so much for being here. Loved it.
Good to be here. I think I mostly enjoyed it, Max.
I'll take it.
Good.
Watch the Businessweek show Thursday nights, 10:30 Eastern on Bloomberg Television, or 8:30 on Bloomberg.com, or the Bloomberg app on connected TVs.